So the neighbors are absolutely furious. And I'm going to get more into that. Well, actually, all this kind of ties together. So, but I'm going to talk about this upcoming cold front that we got coming. Thursday night, it's going to get below zero. I think it's going to, right now they're saying -6. We've had to endure this before. The first year we were here, I was desperately trying to get this tiny house built in time for this huge cold front that was coming. And we got in here a week before the cold front happened, and it lasted 2 weeks. We were in sub-zero temperatures for 2 weeks. I think that was the year Texas froze over also, and they lost their electric. We did pretty good. I mean, we had the stove running, and the problem was it was wet firewood, so that was a real pain. So we had to keep wood in it all the time. Otherwise it would go out and you couldn't get it restarted. It was terrible. Now we have firewood that's below 20%. So it's cured is what it means, not green. The other issue we had the first year was our water tank. We have an IBC tank out there that I filled from the well. It froze. I tried my darndest to keep it from freezing, but we just weren't ready. It just happened too fast. Well, I say too fast. I mean, I built this house over a course of 9 months, so I guess I could have sped up the process, but whatever. Well, it wasn't that bad. We were able to fill buckets from the well. I'll get into all that in a minute. Well, last year, it got down below zero temperatures again, but it didn't last so long. 2 weeks was a long time for me to think that we were going to be able to keep that tank from freezing. It only lasted a couple days. We didn't have any problems. Water didn't freeze. Well, that's what's going to happen this time. I think it's a 2.5 day event that we're going to get this cold. And then I think the temperatures actually come up above freezing again. This wood stove in our tiny house, we only have to run it about 2 to 3 times a day currently. We start the wood stove when temperatures outside get it below 50 degrees. In those particular cases, we may have to light it once in the evening, and that gets us through pretty good the next day, because the next day it gets back up in the 50s, and so once a day. And then when it gets down in the 30s and the 20s, it's more to 2 to 3 times a day. I guess in the 30s we're at 2 times a day. We start it at night, and then we'll start it in the morning, and then again at night. So about every 12 hours or so, maybe 16, something like that. Now, when we get down into the 20s, we light it 3 times. I light it in the morning, then we light it again probably around noon or 2 o'clock, somewhere around there. Well, the thing is when I go to bed a little bit earlier than Carolyn. The temperature really isn't cold enough in the house to relight it. So I just load it up with firewood, and then Carolyn can light it before she goes to bed. And then that keeps us warm until I get up. Sometimes I get up and I don't even have to start it right away. It sure doesn't take a lot of firewood. I've talked about the wood stove quite a bit. It just doesn't take much. When we're talking about firewood, we're talking about, you know, little pieces like this. I mean, it's just tiny little pieces. Here's a piece that I've already got pre-cut, just tiny. And so when I say it takes 6 logs, this isn't a log. I don't think anybody would consider this logs, more like a stick. So it takes 6 sticks. When I'm running east and west, so north and south would be in and out of the stove, I can run larger pieces like this on really cold days. So it's still pretty thin, but it's real long. So I'll run it east and west. I would run 2 pieces like that. Now the water, what we do for that is we have the IBC tank outside, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But also, we have ventilation. I made ventilation that pumps the air from inside the house out into a box where the tank sits. So here's a fan. We have 2 fans now. Last year we only had 1 fan. We have a fan at the wall where the ventilation goes to the wall. We have a fan there. And we run that fan when temperatures are in the 30s. We pretty much run it all winter. We don't shut it off. Remember, we're off grid. So I really got to watch our electric usage. When it gets down to these sub-zero temperatures, we'll turn this fan on also. That'll push even more air through into the water tank. So you can see right now the temperature is below freezing outside, and we're at 38 degrees, 39 degrees roughly, 38.7. I don't know if you can see that. And the thing about that is the receiver to that sits kind of on the edge of the water tank. So it's not measuring the water temperature in the tank, but I've never had a problem with the tank itself freezing. It's the water pump that freezes. We use an RV water pump. You can buy them off Amazon. They're 12 volts. They cost about 30 bucks. They're not that expensive. And I've replaced a couple already. That will freeze. So what I did was I put the water pump inside the ventilation. So the ventilation comes up from the top of the shower that you just saw, runs down this wall into the tank here, and then around to the water pump on this side. And now the water pump's inside that ventilation. So it's surrounded by the heat coming from the house. The receiver of that thermometer sits outside of the ventilation. So it's actually colder outside that ventilation than it is inside. I'm gonna open this up, but I'm not gonna open it so you can see the tank because I don't want the cold air to go down there. So there's the insulation. It's wrapped up. Now people will say, don't you need a return? Doesn't the air need to return back in the house? Well, no, this thing isn't sealed up tight. And that's on purpose. Remember, the water that's coming out of the well is about 58 degrees. If I filled the tank and the tank gets to 58 degrees and I had a return, that cold temperature from the water goes into the house and will cool down the house. Well, I don't want to do that. I just want to heat this up. That's all I want to do. So it ventilates out to here. The thing is that 58 degree temperature from the well also warms this tank up and keeps it from freezing. So what I normally do is I fill this tank about every 5 days. We use about 10 gallons of water a day. It's a 275 gallon tank, so that's 50 gallons is what we're using. However, since this cold front's coming, and I knew it was coming, I haven't filled it. I'm gonna let it get as empty as it possibly can, since I learned about it, and then I'll fill it up. The lower it is, the better. Even if I run out of water, I can fill a little bit at a time until Thursday, and then I can fill it all the way up on Thursday. That makes sure that the temperature of the water is the same temperature coming out of the well, which is 58 to 60 degrees. Water temperature is hard to change. Even though it's going to be cold for 3 days, I may only lose 10 degrees a day of the water temperature in the tank. The thing is if this were to last a long time, and we would just use more water is what we would do. So instead of 10 gallons a day, maybe we use 20 gallons a day, and every 2 or 3 days I'd fill this back up to try to keep warm water coming back into the tank. So that's how I keep the tank from freezing. It's never been a problem, even that first year. Now, when we go over to the well I've designed so it can't freeze because there's no water in the pipe where it can freeze. I've showed this many times. So this is the pipe that the water comes out of right here. Down about 70 feet, I drilled a hole in the black pipe. There's black pipe right here that goes down into it. So about 70 feet, I drilled a small hole in it, a little smaller than my finger. When I'm running the well, the water comes out of here, but it's also shooting out of that little hole down there. No big deal, it's just a little bit of water loss and it goes right back down into the well. It doesn't hurt anything. When I shut the well off, that water will drain back down into the pipe 70 feet. So it can't freeze, there's no water here. I used to have these filters attached, but since I've fixed everything, I don't need the filters anymore. But I used to have these filters on here, and I would have to put the filters inside the water tank box to keep them from freezing, but I don't even use those anymore. So that means all I gotta do is keep my hose drained. So I run it down the hill after I use it. Even if my tank were to freeze or my RV pump were to freeze up, I can still use this for water. What I would do is I would run a hose from this into the house through our water heater. So this is our on-demand water heater. When I turn the water on, there's a flame that kicks on in there and it warms the water up instantly. That comes from the tank. So you can see I got a hose here, comes straight from the tank and into the water heater. All I gotta do is disconnect this hose, take a hose from the well, hook it up to here. Now, the disadvantage is I can't shut it off from in here. The well would have to continue to run. Then I go out and shut it off manually after we're done using it. So we can still get our showers, do our dishes, whatever we want. I just have to go out and start the generator. So we even have a backup system to freezing water, which is a lot better than a lot of homes. I used to live in a home that was 100 years old. Every year the water would freeze and we'd just be out of water. Of course, you'd fill the tubs and all that kind of stuff, but we don't have to do that here. I just got to go out the extra effort of going out there, starting a generator. So we have really a reliable winterized system. I actually look forward to winter now. I used to hate winter. But with us having so much firewood, it's quite the pleasure. I wish I could explain this better. How, I don't know. I just can't explain it. All our firewood was free. We went around the area. They post free firewood on Facebook Marketplace. And I have this app called Free Stuff. And it monitors Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist. And we got 15 years of firewood for free. People will say, I can't afford firewood. It's too expensive. $200 a load. Well, go out and get it free. Now, I know that you're expecting someone to come out and deliver it and split it and the whole thing. Yeah, you got to put some work into it. But once the work's done, it's like, I got firewood forever. So that's the advantage of living in a tiny house with a wood stove like this. Some people are going to say, oh, that wood stove's too big for your house. Just make your stick smaller. Carolyn basically used bark the other day. It's just bark. She lit it up just to kind of knock the chill off a little bit. It worked okay. The only disadvantage to that is it does dirty the window a little bit. Not a big deal. It's easy to clean. You get a little wet wipe, some ash on it, and you got to use the ash. I don't know why. And that ash takes it right off. My only concern about that is the chimney could get creosote built up. I mean, I don't think it will because the wood is dry. But I tell you, there are a lot of people not ready for this. You would think it was the first time it's ever gotten this cold. I know why people are thinking this. Everybody's screaming about it. Neighbors are out there. You got any firewood? You know, they're up there at the store. There's a store, a little country store down the road a ways. They have firewood out there all the time for camping. This is a tourist area. Well, they're out. Everybody's already bought it. And I said this before, and I got a lot of criticism in the comment section. People never plan ahead. They act like this is the first winter they've ever had. The only difference with this cold front that's coming is it's early. It's like coming down the first day of winter or something. Last year it came in January, and the year before it came in January. It got this cold. This is nothing new. But for some reason, people just don't plan ahead. I remember that first year we were here. I had a limb fall down. It snowed, limb fall down. I'm out there cutting it up. Guy walks by and says, don't you think you got enough firewood? You ought to share some of that. I said, no, sir, I don't. I mean, you may disagree. You may think, oh, no, you need to share. But he didn't plan ahead. He knew winter was coming just as much as I did. So maybe he should have gotten some firewood. But that first year, chainsaws were running all over the place. Snow on the ground. People are just cutting down everything they can find to get some firewood. Why are you waiting until it's already cold? I mean, you got to go out there in the cold. I hate doing that. Oh, I can't stand it. Believe it or not, I would rather cut firewood in the middle of summer than go out there in the cold for 15 minutes to cut firewood. So if you click the up next box, take the video that I made yesterday. So if I can inspire you, stay warm when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.